Hello and welcome back to Focus Atlanta. Again, I am your host, Keisha Lanceland. Thanks so much for continuing to watch. In this segment, we're going to meet with Melanie Noose Hilton, and we're going to talk a little bit about food recalls.
Thank you for having me, Keisha.
This is kind of interesting. We don't always know where to go to find out about some of these recalls. Can we start there?
Sure. I would tell you there are kind of two things. From a consumer perspective, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, as well as the U.S. Department of Agriculture, so the FDA and the USDA, who we probably hear about in the media a lot, have created a resource for consumers. It's a way you can subscribe to notifications about food recalls, and that is foodsafety.gov. So they govern that information about recalls. And then, of course, GS1 US, my company, we focus on standards related to traceability. And I think we have some resources available for people as well.
Can we talk a little bit about some of the main reasons food, might be recalled?
Yeah, there's really four key themes that we see related to when foods get recalled. One is around undeclared allergens, just in the situation where something got into a food that maybe wasn't expected or could be a health concern for a consumer. Bacterial contamination, I think that's the one we hear about most often in the media and tends to get the most public view, just again over public health concerns. There's also the case where we have things that get into the process, into the food or into the food's packaging as it goes through the supply chain. And last but not least is a mislabeling on a food package that can result in a potential misleading the consumer around the ingredients or usage. But those are the four most common reasons for a food recall.
And you all just recently revealed the results of a survey. Can we talk a little bit about the results?
Yes, we did a survey of consumers and found lots of interesting data points, but I think two that are really worth calling out. One, about 60% of consumers will avoid purchasing a food in a category that's been recalled in the past. If you think back to some of the challenges we've had around leafy greens over the past 20 years, that can result in consumers choosing not to purchase that food category, and to the tune of 60%. But what I also thought was really interesting in the survey is that 57% of consumers say if they have a food in their home that is the subject of a recall, they will discard the food, even if their state or region is not impacted by the recall. So it's clear that consumers take food safety very seriously, obviously looking out for the health and wellness of their family, but really I think shows a lack of confidence maybe in the data around the specificity of food recall that results in them. I think increased food waste is one of the big side effects we're seeing there.
Some people, I guess their first thought is going to be, well, this has been recalled once, to your point. I don't know what they're doing to make sure this never happens again. So can we talk about the measures that are taken?
Yeah, and incredibly, what we did see in the survey as well, that while 93% of consumers do have concerns about the frequency of recall, about 85% believe that recalls are effective in safeguarding public health. And that's really the result of both improvements in science and advancements in traceability technology. So to date, I think we've done a lot to improve the data sharing around the food supply chain and making sure people know what's safe, where it's at, where it can be purchased. There is a regulation that was passed by the US Food and Drug Administration and has now been turned into what is called the Food Traceability Rule. We refer to as the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA Rule 204. The Food Traceability Rule requires that by July of 2028, all of the companies who engage in the food supply chain provide improved data with their partners, and that would lead all the way to the consumer around the transport and handling and movement of food. That will also indicate where there is a recall. We can quickly find the recalled foods, get them off the shelf, and continue to provide safety to consumers. So GS1 US, because I know a lot of people don't know GS1 US, but what we do is sit at the intersection of that industry, the food industry, as a standards organization, and really help ensure that the labeling on packaging and the tracking of food through the supply chain that we can actually facilitate the implementation of this FSMA Rule 204 traceability enhancements so that we can be as transparent as possible with consumers, which is what I think the goal of the food industry is in implementing the regulation. gs1us.org/food recall will give you a lot more access to resources that you might be interested in, as well as the foodsafety.gov website I mentioned earlier for subscribing to recall alert notifications.
Thank you so much for making time for us here in Atlanta. It was a pleasure to meet you.
You as well, Keisha. Thank you for the time.
Absolutely. All right, guys. You know, we don't always know where to find the information that we need. And truly, it's just all to keep us all safe. So take the opportunity to go to the website, learn more, and stay tuned to More Focus Atlanta. We'll be right back.